Let me just wait for this car to go by. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Darian and today I am going to be doing my July wrap-up. I can't believe it's already July. I feel like I just did my June wrap-up like a few days ago, and even my May wrap-up feels like not that long ago. I don't understand. But anyways, in July I read the most I think I've ever read in a month. I read 9 books, which, like, I know that doesn't sound like a lot to most people, but for me that is hecka a lot. So today I'm going to be talking about the 9 books that I read in July. It was a pretty good reading month in terms of books I liked. It was much better than June. If you saw my June wrap-up or any of my vlogs from June, you know that I struggled through some books. But July was a pretty good reading month for me, so let's just go ahead and get started. So the first book I read in July was White Rage by Carol Anderson, and I actually read the majority of this book in June and I thought I had finished it, but then on I think it was July 1st, I realized I still had 1 chapter left and that I actually hadn't finished it, so I read most of it in June and finished it on July 1st, but it still counts as a July read, I guess. So this book is a nonfiction and it basically talks about the history of racism in America, specifically the history of systemic racism, how that all started, and how that affects, you know, what America is today, basically, and the lives of Black people in America. And I heard a lot of Americans who read this book said that they never learned any of this in school, and I'm from Canada, for those of you who don't know, and I definitely didn't learn about this stuff in school. We focused almost exclusively on Canadian history at my school, so this was really, really eye-opening for me. I knew about systemic racism, but I never knew like all the details of it and how it all started, so I would say this was a really, really educational read and a really important read, and I would really urge everyone to read this book, even if you're not American. There is just so much to learn, and I think knowing the history of racism and, you know, how we got to where we are today can help us learn kind of how to make our world better, basically, and what we can do to make things more equal. And yeah, so I really enjoyed this book as much as, you know, you can enjoy a book like this. I ended up giving it 4 stars just because I found the writing extremely dense, and so sometimes things would just go right over my head. So this is definitely a book that I would love to reread one day to make sure that all of the information that's in it really sticks with me and that I absorb it better, I guess. But I really urge everyone to read this book and to reread it like I'm planning on doing. So yeah, this was a great read. Okay, the next book I read in July is by far my favorite book of July. It would be my favorite book of the year if I hadn't read Strange the Dreamer this year. Oh my god. This book was so amazing, and I was so lucky enough to get an ARC of this book. The book, I should say, the title is Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angeles. Oh my gosh, this book was so amazing. I absolutely loved it. Like, I cannot tell you in words how amazing this book was. I gave it 5 stars in case you couldn't guess that. I have talked about it a bit in a few videos, but now I can, you know, give my full thoughts on it in my wrap-up. So oh, where do I even start? This book follows this girl named Kalia, and what do I want to say? Because I didn't know too much about this book before going in. I heard there was like a circus kind of aspect to it and magicians and stuff, and that's basically all I knew, and I feel like that's how you should go into it. So I'll give a very a quick little synopsis. So basically we're following Kalia, who is a magician, and not just like a pick a card, you know, like not just like those magicians that just do card tricks and stuff. Like, she's a real magician who can do real magic, and she basically has been brought up in this house. She kind of has this teacher who has, you know, been working with her on her magic for years, and he's kept her very sheltered and he doesn't allow her to leave, and she just wants a better life for herself, and she wants to go to this city named Glorian where she hears that there is this competition going on for magicians, and so she goes, she ends up escaping and she goes there, and so it follows her competing in this competition where she's the only woman, because in this world female magicians are, not that they're looked down upon, but they're not supposed to be performers. They're supposed to use their magic for like womanly tasks like in the home. So she's definitely not seen as an equal in the competition, and all the other men are very sexist, and basically it's about the competition, it's about her teacher kind of, I don't want to say too much about him, but he's doing things, and there's also another character who is one of the judges in the competition, and he is very mysterious. All we know about him is that he was one of the greatest magicians, but he retired when he was very young because of some accident that happened, but we don't know the details of this accident at the beginning of the book. And he, yeah, I don't want to say too much more than that, but oh, this book is so good. It comes out on August 25th. I highly recommend you all pre-order it, go buy it the day it comes out, whatever, just make sure you read this book. This book, I went through quite a ride reading this, because I read the first half of the book and I was super into it, but like I knew it would be 5 stars, but I didn't think it would be an all-time favorite yet. But then one night I was like, I'm gonna read this book. Then I accidentally read the second half in one sitting, so I stayed up until 3 a.m. to finish it, and I was a wreck. I was crying, I was not okay. It was 3 a.m. and like no one I knew had read it yet because it was an ARC, and I was like, I need to talk to someone. Like, this book, it put me through such an emotional turmoil. The ending of this book is crazy, like, and I would say the last line of this book is one of the best last lines I've ever read in a book, because I need the second book now. I need to know what's going on with my babies. Oh my goodness. And I've actually like tweeted at the author a couple times on Twitter, and she's answered me, and so that's been really cool. She's really cool. That's just a side note, but yeah, oh my god, I can't wait. I have pre-ordered a physical copy and I can't wait to have it in my hands and just hold it and cry. I love this book so much. Kalia is such an amazing protagonist. She is so confident, but like she doesn't take any shit from no one. Like all these guys in the competition like just want to see her fail, and she's like no, and so she doesn't. Like, she's so amazing. I love her so much. And Darren is my little baby boy. Oh my god, he's such a soft boy. Like, I just want to give him a hug. He is so sweet. I love him so much. Oh my gosh, there's like so many things that I wish I could talk about, but that would be spoilers. But like, I love these two, and like the writing in this book is just absolutely beautiful. You just get transported to this world so easily, and I loved it so much. I cannot recommend this book enough. If you like reading or like if you like breathing, then you should read this book, honestly. Like, it's so good. I loved it so much. I don't know if you can tell, but I really loved it. It's definitely like my favorite book of the year after Strange the Dreamer. I can't wait to own a physical copy. Make sure you get Where Dreams Descend when it comes out on August 25th, and I can't wait for the whole world to read it and just feel these emotions with me. Yeah, I need to stop talking about this now, or else this will be the whole video. Okay. The next book I read was quite the opposite of Where Dreams Descend. This was the first 1 star I've ever given a book. It was something. So the next book I read was The Selection by Kira Cass, And I read this for Becca, from Becca and the Books, her readathon, the Bookopalathon, which was a 48-hour readathon, which I did vlog. I will put it up here, I think. And this was the first book I read for that, and it was something, I'll tell you. So this book follows this girl. I mean, I'm sure you've all read this book already because this book was super popular in like 2012, 2014, like stuff like that, and I just never read it. So maybe I would have enjoyed it more if I had read it when everyone else did, but I definitely didn't enjoy it now. So this book follows this girl named America, which that's a name. And so how do I even explain this? This world, basically, everyone lives in these castes. I think that's what it's called. And so the higher number of your caste, the more wealthy and like respected you are. And so like basically the ones are like the royals, and I think 8 is the lowest one, which are people living on the streets and stuff. And America is a caste 5, I think. So like she's not the poorest, but she's not very wealthy. Her family is definitely struggling to make ends meet. And she is, at the beginning of the book, she has this boyfriend who is a case 6, so he's even lower than she is. And in this world, every time a royal needs to marry, they hold this selection process. So basically the prince of, I don't even know what the world is called, he, you know, was looking for a wife. So the best way to do this is they pick one girl from each province. I think they're provinces, and I think there's 35 girls in total, and then it's basically like The Bachelor. Like they go to the castle and he meets them all and they try to woo him, and then at the end he picks one to marry. So that's the book. So America, very surprisingly, gets chosen as one of the 35 girls, and well, her and her boyfriend break up at the beginning of the book because he wants what's best for her. She shouldn't marry a case 6. She should be with someone like the prince. Like, and so he's so noble. He wants the best for her, and she's like, no, I love you. And he's like, if you really loved me, then you would let me go. Like, oh my gosh, I had so many thoughts reading this. So of course America goes to the castle, and America, she's not like other girls. Like, first of all, she has red hair, which is mentioned many times in the book. She's the only one out of all the girls who has red hair. All of them are blonde or brunette, but America, red hair. This is very important, apparently, because of how often her hair is mentioned. And also, she's nice. She talks to people, where all the other girls in the selection are like, like they're all full of themselves, of course. But America, no, she talks to people and she's kind to her maids, and she like doesn't pretend to be someone she's not in front of the prince. Like, it's just the typical, like, not like your other girl's stereotype. Like, oh, I just couldn't. Like, the things and the dialogue in this book is just not good, and this book frustrated me so much. The only good thing about this book was that it was extremely easy to read. Like, I wasn't bored. I was just like, this is stupid. Like, this is stupid. I'm sorry if you love this book, but I could not stand it. I highly doubt I'm gonna continue this series because I can tell you how it's gonna end. Like, I already know. I can tell you. I've read books before, like, so anyways, all that to say, I gave this a 1 star, and that's all I have to say about it. The next book I read was also for the Bookopalathon, and this was quite, again, I went from Where Dreams Ascend to The Selection, and then I read The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. And I read this, I had the ebook, but I also listened to the audiobook while I read it, and the audiobook for this book is so amazing. So this book, if you don't know, it's written in verse, and Elizabeth Acevedo narrates the audiobook herself, and she is a slam poet, and oh my god, it's so good the way she narrates it. She puts so much emotion into the narration, and if you read this book, I highly recommend listening to the audiobook. Like, amazing, amazing.
Talented, brilliant, incredible, amazing, show-stopping, spectacular, never the same, totally unique, completely not ever been done before, unafraid to reference or not reference, put it in a blender, shit on it, vomit on it, eat it, give birth to it.
So this book follows this girl named Xiomara, and she is, I think, 16 or 17. She's still in high school, and she has a very rocky relationship with her mother and her family. They're not the wealthiest, and Xiomara, all she wants is really to write poetry and find love and just be a teenager and live her life, and her mom just kind of limits what she does a lot, and that creates a lot of tension between them. And oh, this book is just so good. It's like I said, there's just so much emotion in, well, Elizabeth Acevedo's voice when she narrates it, but also just in the writing itself. It's just so amazing. I really, really love this book. I gave it 4 stars. It was amazing. I don't know how else to describe it except amazing, but yeah, I would highly recommend this book. This was very different from the selection, but I'm so glad I read this. And I know Elizabeth Acevedo's book, Clap When You Land, is also written in verse, and I do have that book. So when I read that, I would love to listen to the audiobook as well for that one, because I just want to listen to her voice again. Just please listen to the audiobook if you can, or just pick up the book, and yeah, it's amazing. I loved it. So the last book that I read for Becca's Bookopoly-a-thon is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. This book takes place on this remote island off of Ireland, and it follows this cast of characters as this couple is getting married, and on the night of their wedding someone is murdered, but we don't know who is murdered. So the book kind of goes back and forth between the night of the wedding and the days leading up to the wedding. So in the parts that are like the days leading up to the wedding, you learn more about these characters and their relationships with each other, and you know, a lot of them have some beef with each other. Basically all these characters hate each other, honestly, and so you're kind of trying to guess like, okay, this person hates that person for this reason, so maybe they killed them, because since you don't know who died, like normally in murder mysteries, like, you know who died, you're just trying to figure out who killed them. But in this one, since you don't know who died, you're trying to think like, who could maybe kill someone and who would they kill if they were the murderer, if that makes sense. So I thought this was really interesting and a really interesting twist to the murder mystery genre, because like the whole book I was like, okay, who died? Like I was, you know, trying to piece things together, and I thought the ending was so satisfying. Listen, once I found out who died, I came up very intelligently with who killed them, and I was right, and I was so proud of myself. I buddy read this with Rachel from Let Me in the Library, and I was like yelling at her because I was so excited that I was right. But yeah, this book, I really enjoyed it. I was never bored. I thought the characters were really interesting, and I gave it a 4 stars. I would say in this book, trigger warnings for self-harm, for talk of suicide, well, for murder obviously. But yeah, I would highly recommend this book. I thought it was a really fun murder mystery. The next book I read was You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. This book was so freaking cute. Oh my gosh, first of all, we matched today. I mean, like yellow, and I'm wearing yellow. Honestly, this book is like my ideal cover because purple and yellow are my 2 favorite colors, so like, was this book made for me? I think so. This is a YA contemporary, and it follows this girl Liz who is graduating high school, and she has always dreamed of going to this music school for college, but she's relying on getting a scholarship because her mother died a few years ago and her dad is not in the picture, so her and her brother live with their grandparents and they just can't afford to pay for college. So she's relying on getting this scholarship, and at the beginning of the book she finds out that she didn't get it. So the plan that she comes up with, because she doesn't want to bother her grandparents about this, is to run for prom queen, because apparently at this school whoever wins prom king and queen wins a scholarship, which like, why didn't this happen at my high school? I don't know. But so she runs for prom, which is like, or she runs for prom queen, which is like very uncharacteristic of her. Like she usually doesn't get involved with that kind of stuff. And while she's worrying about that, she also meets this other girl who is also running for prom queen, and her and this girl kind of start to develop feelings for each other. And this book is so freaking cute. Like, I love Liz. She's just so, well, first of all, she's hilarious. Like, I thought this book was really funny, and this book touches on some very serious topics as well. It does speak about the death of her mother, so trigger warnings for death of a parent, and her brother has the same illness that her mother had, so, you know, she's worrying about her brother's health. And there's also a scene where a character is outed, so I trigger warning for that as well. But yeah, this book is just, I thought it was so well written. I would love to read anything that Leah Johnson writes, honestly. And like, this cover is just so, it just makes me so happy looking at it. Like, but yeah, I really like this book. I really loved the ending. It was so freaking sweet. How many times am I gonna say that? But yeah, I gave this book 4 stars. It was just amazing. So make sure you pick this up. It's so good. So the next book I read was When Breath Becomes Air by Paul Kalanithi, and this book just took my heart and ripped it into a million little pieces, and I will never be okay. So basically, this book is a memoir written by Paul Kalanithi, who was a neurosurgeon, and when he was in his 30s, he was diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I think when he was diagnosed, he was told he had like maximum 10 years to live, so he started writing this book. And the first part of this book is basically like him talking about the different patients he had as a neurosurgeon and different things he went through and stuff like that. And I thought that all the like medical talk would go right over my head, because I'm not in sciences, I don't study that, so I thought I was gonna be really confused. But he explained it in a way, like even the most like complicated procedures and stuff, like the way he explained it made perfect sense to me. So this book was so well written, and I was so interested in all the patients he talked about and all the experiences he had and stuff like that. And then the second half of the book was mostly about him talking about his diagnosis and his life, trying to balance, you know, his health and his marriage and his job, while also, you know, dealing with this huge life thing that's going on with him. And he actually passed away before he finished writing this book, so I think he died maybe 2 years after he was diagnosed, so he didn't finish his book. So his wife wrote an epilogue at the end of the book, kind of talking about when his health started really deteriorating and then his last days, and she talked about the day he passed away, and it was probably the most heartbreaking thing I've ever read. It was so it was so sad. I was crying so much. I don't have the words to talk about how freaking heartbreaking this book was. And like, obviously, you know, like, this is not a spoiler that he dies, like, you know that he dies at the end of the book. And the whole time I was reading it, I was like, maybe he won't die. Like, he's so likable, and he, like, when he died, he had a 18-month-old, I think, and it's just so heartbreaking. And I thought this book was so well written and so emotional. Like, even the parts from before he died were just so emotional, and I am so glad I read this, and I feel very lucky to have experienced his writing and that he was able to write the majority of his book before he passed away. And I mean, obviously trigger warnings for illness, so if that's gonna bother you, then maybe don't read this, but I would highly recommend this to anyone who thinks that, you know, they can handle this, because I really, really loved it, and I gave it 5 stars. Okay, we're getting towards the end. So the next book I read was Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor. I started this book at the end of the readathon in May, so not the most recent one I did, but the one from like 2 months ago. I started it when I was getting real loopy and I just never finished it, so I finally picked it up this month and finished it, and I really like this one. I think I gave it 4 stars, which I think is what I gave the first one as well. This is the second book in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series. As you guys know, probably Laini Taylor wrote Strange the Dreamer, which is my favorite book of all time. We know this. And I have really enjoyed reading this series. I don't like it quite as much as I love Strange the Dreamer. I think my main issue with this series is that I just don't connect with the characters as much as I do with Strange the Dreamer. Like, I love Karou, but I don't care about her as much as I care about Laszlo. And Akiva, I honestly don't care too much about him. Like, I don't want anything bad to happen to him, but I don't feel a strong connection with him. Oh, I should probably explain what this is about. So the series follows this girl named Karou, and at the beginning of the first book, I mean, you don't really know too much about who she is. All you know is that she basically works for this chimera named Brimstone, and he collects teeth. And he does something with them, but Karou doesn't know what. And you're also following this angel named Akiva, and angels and chimera have always kind of been at war with each other. And then Akiva and Karou meet, and you know, things happen, and that's all I'm gonna say. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I definitely liked the second half of this book more than the first half. I thought the second half was so engaging and I just didn't want to put it down. And the second half was also really emotional and heartbreaking at times. So I mean, Laini Taylor, like, I would write literally, I would read literally anything she wrote. She is definitely by far my favorite author. Like, even though I don't connect with these characters as much as in Strange the Dreamer, like, her writing is just so beautiful and it's just perfect for me. Like, it's exactly what I love to read, and ugh, she's my queen. I love her so much. But yeah, one thing I will say is that I adore Susanna and Mick. They're like Karou's friends, and they are so freaking cute and they are so funny. Like, anytime I saw that they showed up in a chapter, I was like, yes! Like, I love them so much, so I can't wait to read more about them in the third book. But yeah, I'm excited to finish the series at some point, and I think I said I gave this 4 stars. So yeah, I enjoyed this one. Okay, the final book that I read in July was The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I don't know why I'm so bad at explaining what this book is about. Once again, please go check out Tammy from Tammy Tries to Read. This is her favorite series and she will explain it much better than I ever could. But this basically follows this girl named Rin, and Rin comes from a very poor province and she is looking to get out of there. And so basically she writes this test and she scores very high on the test, so she is able to go to this very like prestigious military academy, and it follows her there, and then a war breaks out. I mean, it's called the Poppy War, so there is a war. And this book is a lot. Like, I mean, this is a adult fantasy and there are definitely a lot of trigger warnings to this book. I read most of this book during the readathon from a couple weeks ago, the most recent readathon, and I kind of wish I had read it like over a longer period of time, because this book is really heavy and I definitely like got burnt out a little bit reading this almost all in one sitting, because the things in this book, so everyone talks about chapter 21, like if you haven't read this book I'm sure you've heard of chapter 21, and that is definitely the hardest chapter I've ever read. Not hard, but like the hardest to read chapter I've ever read. Does that make any sense? Like, it was so disturbing and just so horrifying and awful. So I will leave the trigger warnings in the description below. I would highly recommend you check them out before you read this book, because there is a lot of triggering content there. On the top of my head, I mean, there's war, there's violence, like graphic violence, there is rape, there is genocide, there is drug use, drug addiction. I mean, basically anything you can think, oh, self-harm, anything you can think of really, but I will leave the specific ones in the description below, so please check those out. But this is what I said in my review for this, was that this is one of the most well-written books I've ever read. R.F. Kuang is so freaking talented, and she wrote this when she was 19, which, like, I'm 22 and I could barely write my name. Like, this is so, I'm so impressed by her, and I am really interested to read the second book because this one I had a bit of an issue getting into, but it's partly because I don't read a lot of books that are about war and like politics and stuff, so a lot of talk about politics just kind of went over my head because I'm just not used to reading about that. And also, like, I read this while I was dealing with something very difficult in my life, so I wasn't probably concentrating as much as I should have. But I would really like to read The Dragon Republic. I have heard a lot of people say they like that one better than this one, so I would be really interested to read that. The characters in this book are so well written. They're all so complex, especially Rin, because listen, I love Rin, but also she's not smart. Well, she is smart, but she makes such stupid decisions, and every time, like, it's like Rin, every time she makes a decision, I'm like, okay, did you learn from your last mistake? And she's like, no, and then she makes a stupid decision. She's like, oh no, what have I done? And I'm like, Rin, like, use your head, please. So it's a little frustrating to read about because I just want her to think things through a bit, but she's just a very morally gray and well-written character, and I still love her, but like, she tests my patience. So, but yeah, I gave this book 4 stars. I would really recommend it if you think you can handle all those trigger warnings, and I am interested to read the second book in the series. So that is it for my July wrap-up. Those are the 9 books I read last month, and yeah, overall I had a fairly good reading month besides the selection. But let me know if you read any of these books, if you agree or disagree with any of my opinions, and thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys soon with another video soon. Bye!